decided to make a fourth video in the series. It was just supposed to be just three videos in the basketball series. Now I decided to add a fourth video in the series. This one is something that I've thought about doing for a long time. I apologize. This video could be 25 minutes. This video could be 30 minutes. It might be 35 to 40 minutes. So bear with me for the long, extended time. This is the next video on my sports channel because I'm currently taking a break from my main channels to work on a big special project. This one's going to be called 11, or should I say, you know what? We're going to call it 12 of the best basketball teams. 12, actually, we're going to call it NBA's top 12 greatest basketball teams with the most, who won the most NBA championships. Now, I know that's like a long stretch because the way I'm about to do this video is going to blow your mind. You'll never see sports the way again. Well, you'll see sports again, but you'll never have it explained the way I'm going to explain it. Coming in at number 12 is the San Antonio Spurs from 2005 to 2015. Now, this team was a very different Spurs team. Yeah, we had the original Spurs team with Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Sam Elliott. They called themselves the Twin Towers. That Spurs team we'll get to later on the list. This one was my favorite Spurs team. Tim Duncan's in his prime. He's already won 2 championships, and he's on the verge of doing something in basketball history that is win another title. He goes on to ultimately win 5 championships. You have Manu Ginobili on this team. You have Tony Parker. You have Sam Bowie on that team. You had Robert Horry on this team. Like, this team was stacked. Like, this team could compete with the Lakers, the Houston Rockets, the Dallas Mavericks, the Phoenix Suns, the Portland Trail Blazers. This team was that team that if you wanted to go to an NBA Finals, you had to go through that team in the West to win an NBA championship. And the fact that they won a championship in 2005 when they did away with the Detroit Pistons and then turn around and go in 2007, they beat a young LeBron James and Cleveland Cavaliers that gave Tim Duncan 4 championships. And then to turn around and go to an NBA Finals in 2013 and basically lose to LeBron James with the Heats, and then to turn around and get LeBron James back in an NBA Finals rematch and win 5 championships but go to 6 NBA Finals. Now, this team was in the NBA for like a decade and a half, 12, 13 years. Normally, they break a team up. You got Manu Ginobili, you got Tony Parker, you got Tim Duncan. Normally, you would break that team up after 8 or 9, but these guys were around for like 13, 14 NBA seasons. And the fact that the coach, Greg Popovich, said he would never break this team up until it was time. Once Tim Duncan won his 5th championship ring and basically played 2 more seasons to make it 17 years, this team was just battling injuries. You had Kawhi Leonard on that team, and it's debatable who helped the Spurs win their 5th championship. Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, or Kawhi Leonard. It's still, to this day, it's still debatable who really bought that 4th and that 5th championship rings. Because that's what you want to say. You want to say between championship 4 and championship 5, and when Kawhi Leonard left and won a championship with the Toronto Raptors, you want to say it's kind of similar when Shaq left the Lakers and went to Miami and won a title and showed that it was him who's responsible for that championship. You want to say that this Spurs team lasted longer than anybody, but because they lost a finals, to the Miami Heats, and then the fact that they give credit to Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and then, they credit that to Kawhi Leonard. It's like, but Duncan is the guy that was around in the 90s and the 2000s, and think about it. You want to say the heart and soul, it's always Tim Duncan. He learned from David Robinson on how to be a great player. Coming in at number 11 is the Houston Rockets, 1992 to 1996. This team won 2 NBA championships. Now, the Spurs that were at number 12, they won to round it off, they won 4 to make it 5. But my point is, this Houston Rockets team was a force to be reckoned with. When you look at the 1990s and you look at how teams were stacked, you had Houston Rockets. You had Robert Horry, a young Robert Horry, before he played with the Lakers, before he played with the Spurs and just won nothing but championships. You got a young Robert Horry at that time that was with the Houston Rockets. You had Clyde Juxter, who came in the second championship run. You had Clyde, you had Akeem Olajuwon, and you had these players on this team, and you had the coach. And this team won a championship in 1994 by beating Patrick Ewing and John Starks and the New York Knicks in the 1994 NBA Finals. That team right there had it all. They could play offense, defense. They could play four quarters, the backcourt. They could play overtime, two overtimes, three overtimes. There's nothing that this Houston Rockets team in the 1990s couldn't do. If somebody sit down and ask me man to man, face to face about basketball, which Houston Rockets team would you rather win a championship with? I'm saying give me Akeem Olajuwon. Give me a point guard, give me a shooting guard, give me Robert Horry, and give me the coach. I'm choosing that Houston Rockets team. When I look at the Houston Rockets today, there's just something missing with this team. Like you can tell there is something missing with James Harden when he was with Chris Paul and those guys. Huh?
No, it's the wrong one.
Yeah, wrong address. Apologize that for people. Like I said, I would choose the 1990s Houston Rockets. They won two NBA championships 2 years in a row. And this team had a chance to win three championships 3 years in a row. But the Houston Rocket team that we got in the later 2000s, like Chris Paul, James Harden, that team struggled. Every time you turned around, they would get to the first round, second round, and basically struggle. So thank you. So basically that Houston Rockets team struggled. And if you ask me which Houston Rockets team would I want, I would choose. Most importantly, I would choose that team that won a title. Coming in at number 10 is the Detroit Pistons from 2002 to 2006. Now, for me as a kid, as a teenager, going in high school to college, there was only one basketball team in the East that made me tremble in fear of Allen Iverson trying to get back to the finals. And that was the second wave of the Detroit Pistons. You had Chauncey Phillips. He went from playing with the Minnesota Vikings for 5 or 6 seasons, traded to the Pistons, became the point guard, aka Mr. Big Shot, because he could drop big shots. You bring in Tyshawn Prince, you bring in Rip Hamilton, a guy who played with Michael Jordan in the Wizards. You bring in Rasheed Wallace, you bring in Ben Wallace. Then you get the coach of Larry Brown. He leaves the Sixers and he goes to the Pistons. And then in the 2002-2003 NBA season, you see this team become a force to be reckoned with. They take out the New Jersey Nets. They were on the verge of beating the New Jersey Nets in 2003. They lose in the second round to the Nets. The very next year in 2004, they take out the Orlando Magic. Tracy McGrady puts up a 45-point performance, take him out of the first round in 7 games. They get to the second round, and they see the New Jersey Nets, Jason Kidd and those Nets beat him. Third round is the Allen Iverson and the Philadelphia 76ers, and they put that Philadelphia 76er team in a straitjacket. It was like somebody took a time machine and went back to the 80s where you had Lambeer, Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, and those guys. It was like I was watching a reflection. When I was a kid, I used to see Lambeer smile because he would take an elbow and just go boom. And he didn't care if you got knocked out on the court. The guy smiled. And I saw that in Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace. I looked at Ben Wallace and I saw Lambeer. I looked at Rasheed Wallace, I saw Drew Dumars. I looked at Chauncey Phillips and Rip Hamilton, I saw some Isaiah Thomas. I looked at Andrew Ducalata and he kind of seemed like he was like a Dennis Rodman. It was the bad boy Detroit Pistons all over again. And it was like, who's gonna touch this team in the East? And then they won the title in 2004 by doing away with the Lakers, which that was a shock. For a long time after the Lakers won 3-0, the question was who was going to touch the Laker team? Who was going to touch Kobe Bryant, Shaq, Derek Fisher, Robert Horry, Brian Shaw, Rick Fox, um, Sharon Lou? Who was going to touch that Laker team? And the answer to that question was Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Rip Hamilton, Tyshawn Prince, Andrew Iguodala. Before he went to the Golden State Warriors, he had already won an NBA championship. A lot of people forget that. He didn't just start winning championships with the Warriors. He had already won a title when he was with the Detroit Pistons in 2004. He was on that team. First, he was with the Philadelphia 76ers. Then they did a trade, and he ended up with the Pistons. And then you add in Chauncey Phillips, and that team just destroys that Laker team. Just kills that Laker team. And they go on to win a title in 2004. And who would have thought that a year later, in 2005, this team would go back to an NBA Finals and face the Spurs? And the question was, who could touch the Pistons in the East? And the answer to that question, it was the Spurs. It would have been nice if Kobe and Shaq stayed together, had an NBA Finals rematch with this Detroit Pistons, because it seemed like the Lakers could have competed with this team, but we'll never know. The Spurs, on the other hand, was able to beat this team. Rip Hamilton was injured, Tyshawn Prince was injured, Rasheed Wallace had back problems and technical fouls, Ben Wallace was injured. And Chauncey Phillips could not really stop Tony Parker. He couldn't stop Manu Ginobili. And it's like, how do you stop this powerful Spurs team and all your players is hurt? You win a championship one year, you have a chance to win back-to-back titles, and you couldn't do it. So it makes you wonder the potential. Ultimately, in 2006, we would see the end of this team because they would get beat by a Shaquille O'Neal and a Dwayne Wade, and we would see them go to the NBA Finals and take on Dirk Nowitzki and the Dallas Mavericks in 2006. Coming in at number 9 is, what do you expect? It is the Miami Heats from 2011 to 2014. Now, for people who pick on LeBron James and say he's too nice, he's too tentative, not the Miami version of LeBron. The LeBron James that we saw on that Miami Heat team, you got this sense in the back of your mind that he's going to prove to everyone he is clutch, that he is dangerous on the basketball court. Now, I know when you first hear me say that, you probably say bullshit. Because when you hear LeBron say, we're going to win championships in Miami, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8. It was like, yeah, they lose to the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals. We'll never forget it. That was supposed to be LeBron James's championship, and Dirk said, no, I'm taking that title, sorry, buddy. And then the very next year, to go back to the NBA Finals and beat Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and the NBA lockout. And then as a result of that, you had to go back to the finals a third time and take on Tim Duncan and those San Antonio Spurs. And to have your championship be threatened, and to have Ray Allen be the hero. Because in that game, LeBron scored like 30 points. Dwayne Wade scored 28. Chris Bosh came in and chipped in with 20 points. Hugh Haslam came in there and dropped 15 points. Chamber came off the bench, dropped his 12 points, but couldn't nobody hit a 3. And out of nowhere, here comes Ray Allen, who hits a 3. And they don't just end the series or the game. It was the one defining moment where Tim Duncan had LeBron right where he wanted him, and LeBron kicks the ball out, and Ray Allen says, relax, LeBron, stay calm, I got this. Boom! And you just can't believe it, that in 4 years, this team should have won 3 championships in 4 years. I mean, you don't bring this level of talent together and then expect the world to go, that's it, 2 championships in 4 years? I mean, but when you look at LeBron's first run, or should I say his second run at the table of the championship, That was legendary. For me, Game 6, Miami Heat versus Boston Celtics, I'll never forget it. It was the first time we had two games of Game 7s. That was the best year for me. I mean, personally, you had Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley. You had the LA Kings game 6. You had LeBron James and the Heat versus the Boston Celtics game 6. And LeBron put up 45 points. It was like LeBron James came into the locker room. He came out and it was all business. He came out as Batman. LeBron was a monster. LeBron was monstrosity in that game. 45 points. He comes, he's slam dunking on people. He's blocking shots. He's hanging on the rim. LeBron's coming in there and taking people off the dribble. He comes at Kevin Garnett. He comes at Paul Pierce. You know, that's that one defining moment where he slam dunks on Rondo and looks at him hard like, what? That was the monstrous LeBron that we've never got in Cleveland. And when you see him today in the Lakers uniform, you're kind of saying, I miss that Miami LeBron. I miss that monstrosity. That was like the first time we got a LeBron that was not a nice guy. It was like the Hulk took the basketball and said, give me this shit. And the fact that we wanted more of it, but he went back to Cleveland, and you could see small little flashes of it every now and then in Cleveland, up till he won the championship. And then when he comes to the Lakers, you're just anticipating for, are we going to see a reemergence of that Miami LeBron? Because to me, that was like his prime right there. That Miami LeBron James, that was his prime right there. Coming in at number 8 is the San Antonio Spurs 1997 to 2003. Now, this Spurs team won 2 championships. Now, clearly they won 1999, and then they went back and won in 2003. That gave Tim Duncan 2 championship rings. It gave David Robinson 2 championship rings. They only won a total of 5 titles. But my point is, what I'm trying to explain to you is that this team, nothing comes close to this Spurs team. And the reason why nothing compares to the team of that first dynasty of the Spurs is because before Tony Parker came, before Manu Ginobili came, you had Sam Elliott. You've had David Robinson. You had Tim Duncan. You had that Spurs team. And that Spurs team, you couldn't touch that team. You had 2 7-footers. Most teams have 1 7-footer. This had 2. And the powerful team in the West, you know, Lakers, they were able to stop the Spurs because they had Shaq. But Houston Rockets, they struggled with this team. The Phoenix Suns, the Dallas Mavericks, Portland, Denver, they all struggled against this Spurs team. This team right here could win 50, 60 games if they needed to. And the fact that David Robinson won 2 championships and retired the way he did with class was great. But you always got the feeling, what if he would have stayed and helped them win a championship? Just imagine what could have happened had that team stayed another season too. Tim Duncan would not be sitting here with 5 rings. Tim Duncan would probably have as many championships as Michael Jordan would have had because the potential was there. This first Spurs team, the second one is great and legendary, but the first one, to me, the first one is, you could see the passing of the torch. David Robinson passing the torch to Tim Duncan. Like, to me, this is what this team is all about. All right, coming in at number 7, the Detroit Pistons from the 1984 to 1990. Now, this team won 2 NBA championships. Now, this is the Detroit Pistons team that I was talking about. Joe Dumars, Lambeer, Isaiah Thomas, Dennis Rodman. This bad boy Pistons team. As a kid, I was always terrified to see Michael Jordan go against this team. The way Michael get hit in the face, hit in the back of the head, 3 guys slam Michael onto the floor, and you'd be like, man, I don't want to play basketball. And I never told my dad, but that was one of the reasons why I never wanted to play basketball. I'm like, if I got to get dogged out like Michael Jordan, I might as well just not play basketball. And guess what? It actually happened to me on the playground. I was in there trying to fly in the air like Mike, and somebody came with an elbow like Man Beer, like, get your ass out of the way. Boom! And I'm like, why y'all abusing me like Michael? And this one kid looked at me like, you want to be Michael? I'm going to show you what Michael Jordan go through. People were taking what they did in the game and would play it out on the court. It was like people wanted to do a reenactment of how Isaiah Thomas would just, hit them threes. And then the fact that Lambeer smiled when you got beat up in the game. It's like this guy, this guy's scary because the way he would smile at you. And then if you look today and you watch the footage, you go, it's a part of the psychology. It's how they won their championships. And this team been robbed because the potential they had, they could have won 3 championships. It was there. You get the sense they were robbed. Coming in at number 6 is the Boston Celtics. 19. Oh, actually, let me take that back. It's the Boston Celtics at number 7. But which one? The 2008 to 2004 Boston Celtics. Now, this was like the resurrection of that Celtic dynasty. Paul Pierce had played 12, 13 years of his career in Boston. The guy was frustrated. The guy was mad that he couldn't win a championship. He felt that he would never reach the level of a Kobe, a Michael Jordan, and felt that he was going to end up like Reggie Miller. Like, he didn't want to say it. I mean, back then he wouldn't say it, but you could tell he had a feeling he might end up like those players. And I think Jason Kidd was one of the players that told Paul Pierce, calm down, relax, your time to win a title will come. And it did. Like, no sooner than Jason Kidd and 5 other veteran players said it, it happened. Kevin Garnett plays 13 seasons with the Minnesota Timberwolves and goes to Boston. All of a sudden, you got Ray Allen. You got Paul Pierce. You got Kevin Garnett. You bring in the coach. You bring in Coach Doc Rivers. And all of a sudden, you got the reemergence of something that you have never seen since the 1960s. It's like all of a sudden, it was a reemergence of Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, Dennis Johnson. And you can't believe that all of a sudden it's a new Celtic team. They come in and they start whooping ass in 2007. But it's not until 2008 that they go all the way to the finals. First round, they have some trouble with the Atlanta Hawks, take them out of it. The second round, they beat up on the Orlando Magics. Third round, they have to put LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the straitjacket. And then they go to the NBA Finals, and they face Kobe Bryant, Andrew Bynum, Pat Gasol, Derek Fisher, and those guys in the Lakers, and they win a championship. And then the idea that they could have went back in 2009, but they got beat out by the Orlando Magics. And then there were injuries. And then they go back to the NBA Finals in 2010. And what do this team give us? They give us something that I've been asking for years. A NBA Finals rematch, the Lakers versus the Celtics, man. What more could you ask for? I mean, as a kid, there's only a few things you ask for. A girlfriend, a job, Lakers, Celtics, NBA rematch, kick ass. And that's the stuff of legends. And the fact that it went 7 games, Kobe gets his revenge. Kobe wins on the biggest stage of them all and beats the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics went to the finals twice when they could have went to the finals 3 times. And the fact that we got to see that matchup twice, and then Christmas Day, oh man, them Christmas Day matchups were physical. You saw technical fouls, fights break out, trash talk. It was like Magic versus Larry all over again. It's like the television people figured out how to give us the games, and it was like a repeat. Coming in at number 5 is the LA Lakers of 1980 to 1985. Now, this Laker team won 5 championships. Of course, we know the Lakers actually won 16 in total, but this team is legend. You had Magic Johnson when they was called Magic. You had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You had Doc Rivers on that team. Oh yeah, Doc Rivers came into that fold. You had Byron Scott. This was the Laker team. James Worthy was on that roster. And that team dominated. And what made their championship so memorable, as a kid, I would always watch the old footage, and they said Magic was the only Laker player to play all 5 positions. They had a situation where Kareem hurt his ankle, couldn't play. James Worthy has some knee problems, and they were a little concerned, and Magic came up and said, I got a great idea, you guys. And they looking at Magic like, Magic, go on and sit there. Magic said, no, I'll play all 5 positions at different times of the game. And they kind of thought about it and said, Coach, you think that'll work? And Coach said, let's give it a shot. Of course, the GM had to say yes, and Magic solidified, and the rivalry. I mean, I didn't get to see how good and how great Larry and Magic was because I was like a little baby playing with my toys. But the times that I started to get a little older in college and look back at some of them films, it was like, man, I mean, no wonder why Magic was so good. I mean, the way Magic did the toss. I mean, who could do that? 6'8", 240 pounds. The way he could slam the ball, the way that he scored 40 points in his game, and then the way he did that nice little tagline when he won five, back to back. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then to finish his career off being on the Olympic Dream Team with, of course, Larry Legend, Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, and those guys. You bring John Stockton, Karl Malone. That's the stuff of legends. And for him to go out like he did and to win five, go to another NBA Finals, pass the torch to Michael, that's what I remember about Magic. The fact that he won five championships, was on the verge of winning a sixth championship, lost to Michael, and with class, Magic passed the torch to Michael. But you always got this feeling, had Magic not got hurt, what possibilities could it would have been nice if we could have got a Lakers versus Bulls NBA Finals rematch. Just imagine how epic that could have been. Had Magic had more time on his hands, we could have got a rematch, and it would have happened. All right, coming in at number 4 is the Lakers again, 2000 to 2004. Now, this Laker team won 3 championships. Now, this is the Laker team that I kind of grew up in. Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Rick Fox, Derek Fisher, Brian Shaw, Tyronn Lue. That was the Laker team. If you were not a Laker fan, and I hate to tell you this, if you were not a Laker fan back in the day, they ran your ass down 15, 20 blocks. You couldn't even not be seen without a Laker jersey. I remember I was in high school and my friend looked at me and said, you got a Philly Sixer jersey on? I said, yeah, what about it? He looked at me and said, when Kobe win 2 championships in a row, take that fucking shit off. I said, all right, you on. And when they beat up on that team and won another title, I was shocked and did miraculously. I was surprised. I was shocked. I had never seen anything like it. The fact that they won 3 championships in a row, the potential to win more was there, but Kobe and Shaq couldn't see eye to eye, and it broke your heart when Kobe left. When when Kobe had his issues with Shaq, and when Shaq left, I had never seen anything like it. So it was sad to see what had actually happened to that to that team. So it happened. Now, coming in at number 3 is the Boston Celtics from 1982 to 1987. Kevin McHale, Larry Legend. This Boston Celtics team, we all know Larry Bird won 3 championships. And Larry tells the story that he had a tractor trailer and he was always doing work on the off season to keep himself busy. And had Larry not broke his back, there's no telling how many championships he could have won. I mean, he was the only player that could hit three-pointers and compete at a high competitive level. The guy could score 20, 30, 40 points if he had to, and the guy wasn't afraid to guard people. When you see him years later coach Reggie Miller and give Reggie Miller a vice against Michael Jordan in the 1997-1998 NBA season, and they clashed in the playoffs when it was the Bulls versus the Pacers, it was due to that success that even past that mark, he could do it again. Now we get to number 2, the Golden State Warriors. Now, here's why they're at number 2. Because there's this guy from 20 years ago on a radio station who was player hating on Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and the Chicago Bulls, and he tried to downplay the 72 and 10 and said it was laughable. Okay, not to pick on the Golden State Warriors, because Stephen Curry did win 3 NBA championships. Now, we know the Warriors in their franchise history won 6 championships, but Stephen Curry and the Warriors won 3 championships, but in the year that they had 74 wins and less losses, and then lost to LeBron James and Kyrie Irving in an NBA Finals rematch the very next year, you can't you can't have the best record, you can't have the MVP, and then surpass Michael Jordan and then lose in the NBA Finals. I mean, there's a reason why people say what they say about Michael Jordan's the greatest. And Stephen Curry has won 3 championships. And I don't think Stephen Curry's finished yet. I still think this Warrior team might have one more run in them at winning a championship. I think they need 3 more players, a draft pick, and before Stephen Curry's career is over, I think Steph might win one more title to make it 4. Now, coming in at number 1 is a team that no team can compare to, and that is the Chicago Bulls, 1991 to 1998. The fact that you have a team with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, Bill Paxton, Phil Jackson's the coach. This is the team that I grew up watching in the 1990s was the Chicago Bulls. Anytime I watch basketball, I always tune in to watch Michael Jordan. If the Power Rangers wasn't on, if wrestling wasn't on, I was right there in front of the TV picking a basketball up and trying to act like Michael Jordan, try to cross over, try to slam dunk like Michael, try to stick my tongue out like Michael and just go boom like Michael. And the fact that every time he won a championship, I had never seen anything like it. I mean, he has 2 three-peats. He's undefeated in the NBA Finals. He wins six times, and then in 1997 NBA Finals, right? What makes that championship so memorable? It's the fact that Michael gets a stomach virus. Michael plays with the stomach virus. Well, he gets sick. He gets food poison. And then Michael drops 38 points. Who do you know in basketball history drops 38 points after being food poisoned? I mean, an average basketball player would have not even played for the rest of the finals, and your team would have lost the championship. I mean, and he done it against Karl Malone, John Stockton, and that Utah Jazz. And then to turn around in 1998, have an NBA Finals rematch, and win the championship again, and retire. And it's like you have never gotten anything great since then. It's like that Bulls team, Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan. It's like nothing compares to that. And you fast forward 20 years later, and there's no team on this list except for Kobe, Shaq, Lakers that probably could touch this Bulls team. And maybe, and just maybe, I would argue the Spurs team. Any one of the Spurs team. Maybe they're the only ones that might be able to touch this team. So there you have it, people. This was a long list to make. And this was a long video to make. So until then, peace.